Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Now, circumstances have dictated that I record in the daylight once again, so I feel very much so weirded out being a night owl. But it is what it is. And for today's episode, we're throwing in a little extra here for the Fighter's Guide for Pathfinder. And we're going to just look at some slight variations on the build that I presented here overall. Well, I say slight. Really, there's some significant deviations, but, potato, potato, all of that, however you want to phrase it or look at it, these are still some different takes on the fighter, just briefly presented here today, that you can use the build and the mechanics we've learned about beforehand in order to try to make something different, interesting, fits the playstyle you have in mind, or fits the character that you have in mind, if this is how you want to take a look at it. And generally, I tend to recommend that one above all, building the character to reflect who the character is as much as what you want them to do. So let's go ahead and get cracking right on along with this, shall we? So, for starting us up with variations, we have one that is, well, it's a reference back to the interesting fighter's guide that I had thrown out there, gosh, almost 2 years ago now. For this one, we changed the stat array up to focus more on the dexterity score, improving intelligence up to 13 and ramping up the attacks of opportunity as much as we can. We're also going to specialize with the polearm like the spear, or better yet, the halberd. You change out your weapon feats to focus on the polearm that you select, along with the weapon group training you get as a class benefit, so that way you maximize the potential of your polearm with the damage and your ability to hit. And then for feats, we swap around a little bit here, picking up dodge, mobility, spring attack, so that way we can move, attack, move, combat reflexes, combat expertise, improved trip, and combat patrol. So what combat patrol in particular will do for you is any opponents within a threatened area that you're in, if they choose, they have to either choose to stay in place, or when they move, they automatically provoke an attack of opportunity from you. And this is where having your dexterity score get pumped up as much as possible to maximize the number of attacks of opportunity will be so incredibly helpful for you, especially while using a polearm, because unlike the falchion, the polearm has a threatened area of 10 feet naturally. So this plays in with lunge, which will give you a 15-foot radius that you threaten with this weapon. And this only gets even better if somebody casts Giant's Growth on you, or you have some other means of extending your reach even further. So you're going to be affecting a wide area while not having to move all that much. You're going to be forcing the enemy to deal with you rather than you having to use the step up feats to go after them. You can completely drop that series. I mean, you don't have to worry about trying to keep up with your target. Your target has to worry about getting away from you without getting hit. And you affect a wide area. It's incredible. Potentially, the damage very much so keeps up with the falchion. Maybe not outpaces it, because the falchion does get critical hits more often, and that will definitely boost the overall damage output much further beyond what you can do with the halberd. But you're still going to be keeping up pretty nicely, and being able to affect a wider area means, well, your positioning does not have to be quite so precise. And bear in mind, once you get up to level 20 and you get that weapon mastery, selecting the halberd, you go up from a times 3 critical multiplier to a times 4. And using the critical feats that we had from before, you're expanding from a 20 to a 19 to 20, which you're not critting 1/4 of the time. But still, having that wider critical range is helpful, it is useful, and getting that times 4 damage bonus, I mean, my God, can you imagine you roll max damage on it? It'd be incredible, absolutely devastating. And this build is particularly fun to play around with. And also for this build, I would recommend going elf for it. Not that our alchemically enhanced human isn't a good choice for it, But the elf gets that bonus to intelligence, which we kind of need there, and helps to free up some of our stat points. Although you can still do the alchemically enhanced human, you just might lower your constitution score a little, maybe cut back on the strength, something. As while we want a higher strength, the fact that we're using a two-handed weapon still gives us that strength and a half bonus on damage there. So we lose out a little bit, but we make up for it in getting increased attacks of opportunity, and by using improved trip, we prevent attacks of opportunity against ourselves, knock opponents prone, potentially, using the trip attack, which you can do with the halberd very easily. I'd argue you can do it with the spear, but definitely with the halberd you get a bonus to it. And that means that while they're prone and in melee with you, they don't have their dexterity bonus to their defense, also meaning for certain classes that depend on dexterity, they're losing some of their class features as well because they're prone and in a melee. And when they get back up, unless they have specialized feats for it, they'll provoke attacks of opportunity. So whether you're dealing with a swarm of enemies or just a smaller number, if you're using your trip attacks to put them down, then you can use your attacks of opportunity to keep them just in pain while they try to get up and even just deal with you or try to get away from you. So very, very much so a very fun build. Definitely pick out one of the races that boosts their dexterity. If you can get dexterity and intelligence boosted, so much the better. But of course, this is not the only variation. This is not the only playstyle to the fighter. You think we're going to be that limited as to just throw one thing at you? No, we have two. And the second is significantly shorter than the first, but it's still very, very fun. For this one, we leave the stat array as is, and we can even just go with leaving the alchemically enhanced human in here. Though dwarf is not a bad choice either for this one. Dwarf, orc, half orc, anything that can still give you a decent strength bonus, but especially a constitution bonus, will mesh pretty nicely with this overall. In this instance, we're focusing on weapon and shield combat. I say weapon and shield because, as much as I love swords, they're not the only option. A battle axe works really, really well with this build as well, and battle axe paired with a shield historically also works really well because an axe gives you a lot of offensive potential, but doesn't have quite the same maneuverability and defensive capabilities that a sword has. But when that's paired up with the shield, which is pretty much all defense and a little bit of offense, it's a beautiful pairing and allows a person to do a lot of damage. Well, historically, in the game, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good option as well. And for this particular build, the feats we're going to be looking at and focusing on will be the two weapon fighting feat chain and the shield bashing feats, just building all the way up into that. So that way you can pick up a spiked shield, get it enchanted, and attack with that as well as with your weapon without losing the defensive bonus that your shield will provide for you. Absolutely essential if you're going to be shield bashing to make sure that you can keep your defense bonus on while you're making all these extra attacks. You're going to get a significantly higher armor class as well as some offensive capability out of that shield, but you're only going to be threatening that immediate 5-foot area around you. So you're going to need to be aware even more so of your positioning, especially if you're going to be needing to protect your squishier allies. Positioning will absolutely be critical since, unlike the spear fighter, you're not quite going to be able to stop all the opponents around you or afflict them all with attacks of opportunity and trip attacks. So definitely be a bit more conscious about all of that. If you still include the lunge feat with this build, you can extend your reach out further, but still, it's going to be a bit trickier for you. And of course, there are so many more variations in this. These are very, very brief looks at different builds for the fighter. Certainly, we may circle around to this another time. But that is not going to be up to me, or at least ideally not. I want you all to go down there in the comments below. Let me know what you've thought of this series so far. Post any ideas or thoughts on your own variations of fighter builds and whatnot. I'd love to see them. I'm always looking for new ideas. I play with different things constantly and tinker around. Certainly, these builds that I'm talking about here are could almost entirely be done with the core rulebook, but some of the feats go out and beyond. So I like using the different books and online resources to help play around with these things. Official online resources, third-party stuff can be a bit hit or miss in terms of whether or not it's balanced well, broken, ungodly powerful. So, just work with your DMs, definitely work with your players. Try to be a little bit flexible with them because honestly, whatever options you allow them to have means you're allowed to use them as well. So, let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Also, cast your votes for what the next build guide is going to be here in the player's guide. What class that I haven't covered already, which is, let's see, Fighter, Witches, Alchemist, Brawler, and Monk. Those are the 5 classes I've done so far, and there are plenty more to go. So select from any of the other classes, and we'll see about putting something interesting together, something mechanically useful, something mechanically effective. And we'll just do that again around the next time for the player's guide. Gosh, that outro got so sloppy there, but I'm going to leave it. And thank you all so very much for your time. I appreciate that you stopped in here. If you've enjoyed this video, then go on down there and hit the like button. And if you've enjoyed today's video, then you're going to probably enjoy some of these videos popping up over here. Or if this hasn't been your first stop and you've just been enjoying things overall, then go ahead and go down there and hit that subscribe button so that way you get notified the next time I upload videos here at the Gamer's Den. But once again, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good day.